Hello, church. If you have Bibles, turn to Philippians chapter 4. Philippians chapter 4, we are wrapping up the last lesson in this four-part series on joy, according to the Apostle Paul, using the book of Philippians as kind of our baseline, our guideline for how to have joy. In the book, Paul goes through several mindsets that if you have these mindsets, you will have joy no matter what situation you're going through in your life. I hope you're doing well. I hope that these lessons have been encouragement to you, that these have been helpful to you. I think it's a very unique way of looking at the book of Philippians and to looking at joy overall. I think a lot of us don't think about joy a whole lot. We think about happiness or what makes us happy. But joy is something a little bit deeper, but it's more fulfilling as well. So I hope these lessons have been good to you. Next week, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I haven't done a sermon on Jesus in a while. So we're going to look at Jesus and some of the things that he would do and how he would react to some of the stuff that is happening in our life right now. So that's where we'll go next week. But right now, let's wrap up this section and this book on joy according to the Apostle Paul. We've looked at several of the chapters. We've looked at the first three chapters and how each one had a different mindset that we must have in order to have the joy that Paul had. The first one was being single-minded. How we should be so focused in our life that no matter what happens in our life, we know what we should do because we're going to work to the glory of God and we're going to work to the glory of others and helping His kingdom. And we have that focus. We have that focus in our life that we are just single-minded. We have a single-minded purpose in our life. And then two kind of just relates to that and how we need to have a selfless mindset. How it's not just about our interests and what we want and what we need and thinking about us as us, but looking towards the interest of other people. How we need to give of our means and how we need to have the mindset to look at the interests of other people. And we had examples of Paul doing that, of Christ doing that, of Timothy doing that, and Epaphroditus doing that. All of them had this selfless mindset of they didn't care at what cost it was to them as long as they could do good to others. And that's having a selfless mindset. And then in chapter 3, we talked about a spiritual mindset. Not thinking about the things of this world, not having a fleshly mindset like the Pharisees had or these Jewish people, nor having the fleshly mindset of the Gentiles, those who were pagans, who only thought about their flesh and how they could pleasure themselves the next day. They not having that fleshly mindset, but instead having a spiritual mindset that is looking to things that are above and things that are greater, and how we can even use the things on this earth, not for their being, not so we accumulate a lot of wealth and so we can, have great prestige or have great power, but how we can use all those things to the benefit of God and others in His kingdom. Again, that ties back into the selfless, that ties back into the single mindset. They all kind of relate to each other, but they have their own individual quirks. And then finally, today in chapter 4, we're going to learn about how to have a satisfied mindset. We're going to learn how to have a contentment in our life. So this lesson is going to be kind of divided up into two parts. One is going to, the first part is going to be focusing on verses 10 through 13, which really emphasizes this last point, having a satisfied mindset, being content in everything, every circumstance. And we're going to focus on that. We're going to sum that up. And then we're going to loop back around to verses 2 through verse 9. And we're going to look at how Paul kind of wraps this up, and he tells the Philippians to be certain things, to have certain attributes among them, and how they gain those attributes is by doing these things. And one of those will be joy and how to get that. That's the one we kind of emphasize, but there's many others. And so we're going to look at how to finally wrap this up and how to have a satisfied mindset, how to have these mindsets. And then we're going to look at and how we need to apply these and the encouragement that Paul has to the Philippians to have all these and what to do with all these mindsets. So that's the plan for today. So let's jump in there. Let's get into scripture. If you have your Bibles and you haven't turned already, Philippians chapter 4, and we'll be starting in verse 10. Verse 10. Philippians 4, verse 10. I rejoice in the Lord greatly. Now at length you have received your concern for me. You were indeed concerned for me, but you had no opportunity. Not that I'm speaking of being in need, for I've learned in every situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low and how to abound. And in any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abstinence and need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. So as we look through this section, I want to take this verse by verse. And we see right off the bat in verse 10 who he's concerned about, what he places the emphasis on. It's not on his own needs, how he's in prison, how he has no way of sustaining himself. If you didn't know, back in the day, when you're put under house arrest or you were in prison, the government or the jail did not provide any food for you, any clothes for you. They didn't provide anything for you. You had to either pay through that through your own savings or your own money, or you had to have people outside, either your family or in this case, the Philippian congregation, bring you money in. But he says he didn't have concern for his own self, that he was in desperate need. He wasn't focused on, oh, thank you, you gave me so much money, I just really needed this. I'm so worried that I wouldn't have enough to live. I didn't know what I'd do without you. I was starting to get really hungry, and he was not focused on that. He's focused instead on how this has affected them and how this is good for them to give. Later after this, in verse 14 and following to the end of the chapter, he really dives into that, and you could read that in your own time, or if you want to pause this video, that's a good thing about technology. You pause the video and go look at that. But he really emphasizes that, and he looks how giving is actually better for them than him actually receiving the money. And so he emphasizes that portion. And then he moves on to verse 11, again saying that he's not speaking in need, for I have learned to, in whatever situation, to be content. I want to emphasize the learned. He learned in whatever situation to be content. This is the first of two learns. The second one is in verse 12. I've learned the secret to facing plenty, hunger, absence, and need. To have contentment, to have a satisfied mindset, it has to be learned. It's not something that you automatically get bestowed upon you. It's not something which, coming out of the womb, it's like, I'm content, I'm satisfied. No, naturally humans are wanting more. They're not satisfied. They're never satiated. And they're always wanting more and more and more. It's something that you have to learn. And how you learn it is that you're in those situations and you fight through those temptations and those wants and those desires, and you master them. You master them. And that's how he learned to be content, is because he was in situations of need. He was in situations of plenty and hunger and absence and need. And in every situation, he had to learn to be content. So if you are thinking, oh, I need to be more content in my life, I'm just complaining all the time, I'm grumbling, I really shouldn't do that, it's just hard for me to be content, to be satisfied, don't worry. It's something that you have to learn, and you have to put in effort to learn. It's not something that you're just going to pray for and it's going to come upon you. You have to be in those situations. And the good thing is you can practice this no matter what stage you are in life. If you have a lot, you can be content. If you have little, you can be content. No matter what station you are in life, how well you're doing, you can practice contentment in your life. Being content, being satisfied for what God has given you, because it's something you learn. And then he continues in verse 12. I know I know how to be brought low. I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I've learned the secret of flexing plenty and hunger, absence and need. So there's a few things. There's a lot of things in here. Verse 12. He knows how to be content in any circumstance. He knows how to be brought low, how to be humbled, and then how to have a success, wonderful success. You can study his missionary journeys, how in some towns he went into, he just faced persecution, and he couldn't seem to get anyone to listen to him. Especially in like Jerusalem, how he just tried it over and over again and wanted desperately to get the Jews to listen and to obey Christ, but it just wasn't there. But in other places, he just had immense success. It was just a bountiful success. And in either way, you have to have content. In the same way, it says he learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, absence, and need. Now, the interesting thing is that I thought of in verse 12 is I get being content. I get being satisfied when I'm hungry or when I'm in need or when I'm brought low. But why would I have to learn contentment? Why would I need to learn to be satisfied when I have plenty, when I have abundance, when I'm abounding? Because I think that is the most difficult time to be content. I think that's the most difficult time to be satisfied in our life, is during the times in which we are doing really great, where things are just going our way, when there's plenty, when there's abundance, we're doing really well at work, we're getting promotions, we have a lot of money in our life, we have a lot extra in the savings account, we're out of debt, things are just going great in our life. Because you want more. If we left to our own devices and left to our own humanity, we will not just be content with what we get, the abundance we have, because we will just want more. It's like, oh man, wouldn't it be great to have an extra $1,000 in the bank? That would be so great. I'd feel a lot safer. Or I've been so blessed. I have a house and a car, but wouldn't it be great to finally get that car? I will always want it, or to get a little bit nicer of a house and a little bit nicer part of the town. It'd just be that great. There's nothing wrong with enjoying the things of this life and buying a little bit nicer house or buying a little bit nicer car. There's nothing wrong with that, and don't think that I'm condemning using the blessings God has given us for our own enjoyment. That's why God gave us that. But we have to, keep in mind, to go back to what he said, having a spiritual mindset, how we can also use those things to help other people. And then two is, you will be okay if you can have that extra car or the extra house or that extra $1,000 in the bank, or whatever you desire, whatever you want. You will be okay if that doesn't happen. You will not be overly disappointed. It won't depress you. It won't get you down in which you can't function. You will be okay. And that's what it means to have contentment. You're not going to grumble. You're not going to complain. Instead, you'll be thankful, and you'll thank God for all the blessings He gave to you. And that's the difference, is if you don't get those things that you want, you're okay. And so you're learning to have contentment, not only when you're in need, but when you have plenty, when you have abundance. And that may be the harder one of the two, depending on who you are. The second thing I want to look at in verse 12 is this phrase, in any and every circumstance. Any and every circumstance. This really ties to both the hunger and abundance. And really, it's in everything. Because if you are like me, there's certain parts of my life that I'm content with, that I'm good with, that I am, I don't need more, because those are the things that really pertain to me, or the things that I just really want. Furniture, I'm good with anything. If it's comfortable, I don't care how it looks. I couldn't care less. That's not something that really appeals to me. I'm content with it. On the other hand, there's certain things that I really like nice things, that I want more and more and more. And so it's not just in this select area. So maybe you're really good in monetary, where you're happy monetarily in your life, that if you go really poor, you're fine. You have what you need. But maybe in popularity, that's something that you struggle with, that you just want more and more popularity, and that's what you strive with. Because being content does not just have to do with money or the physical things in life. It can do all kinds of things in this fleshly world. And so it's in every circumstance that you have to learn to be content, that you have to learn to face plenty or hunger, abundance, and need. It's every circumstance in your life that you have to learn contentment. And then finally, the last thing for verse 12, it says, I have learned, in the middle of verse 12, I have learned this secret of facing plenty of hunger, abundance, and need. Paul says he's learned the secret. Well, what is that secret? Wouldn't you like to know that secret? Like, what was the secret that Paul learned that helped him facing hunger, and when you're starving, or when you're in need, or when you're abundance and you're plenty? What is that secret? What is that secret that he learned? And I think that secret is in verse 13. Probably one of the misused verses in all the Bible. Verse 13, I can do all things through him who strengthens me. Now, when I usually see this verse, it is not applied to this context whatsoever. It's someone on the football field saying, I can do all through him who strengthens me, and I'll go tackle this guy, I'll go score the touchdown. Or I can do all who strengthens me, and I'll lift a bunch of weights. This is how this verse is usually used, is in this context. But the secret, he says, to contentment, to satisfaction in your life, is relying on him who strengthens me, which is God. It's a reliance on God, having faith in him, trust in him, that no matter what happens, I'm okay, that things will happen. I have absolute trust in him, and I can be content because he's taught me how to be content in my life. He's taught me how to be satisfied in my life. And that's really where this contentment and this satisfaction comes in my life, is you have to learn this principle. And if you learn this principle, and you learn to trust in God, and you learn to trust in him, and you put your full reliance on him, then when the stock market collapses or plunges or goes up and down, you won't be biting your nails and worried. When your retirement looks a little bit scarce than usual, you won't be anxious out of your mind. You won't be worried about being robbed, or if you can pay the bills, or any of these things in life. You will have peace because you'll be content, because you'll have a satisfied mindset in your life. And that will lead to a joy that can never be taken away from you, peace that can be never taken away from you. And you will have joy like the Apostle Paul. And that's what we all strive for, to have that joy. So that is the fourth area. The fourth mindset we need to have is being single-minded, having a selfless mindset, being a spiritual mindset, and then having a satisfied mindset. Those are the four mindsets they have. Now, to the second part of the lesson, as we've talked about, and we'll get to in just a minute, having these four mindsets bring you joy. But they don't just they're just not limited to joy. If you'll go back and look at chapter 1, verse 9, chapter 1 and verse 9, this is the very beginning. This is during his introduction to the letter. And he talks about what his prayer is for the Philippians. Starting in verse 9, it is my prayer that your love may abound more and more with knowledge and all discernment, so that you may approve what is excellent, So be pure and blameless for the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ to the glory and praise of God. Now, so he says that he wants them to be full of knowledge, discernment, prove what is excellent, pure, and blameless, and be filled with the fruit of the righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ to the glory of God. Okay, you're the Philippians. Okay, yeah, that sounds great, Paul. I really want to do that. Okay, how can I be filled with the fruit of righteousness? How does that happen? Having the correct mindset. And I think this is what he, through these next verses, in verses 2 through verse 9, he's telling them what kind of fruit to have. This is the fruit that you should have. If you do all these things and you can do all those things through this mindset, you will have the fruit of righteousness. So let's go down this and apply this to your life. Apply this to your life. So starting in verse 2, I treat Euodia and I entreat Syntyche to agree in the Lord. Yes, I ask you also, true companion, help these women who have labored side by side with me in the gospel, together with Clement and the rest of my fellow workers whose names are in the book of life. So these two women, who were wonderful women, it appears, they had helped Paul many times. These were not, one was an evil person, a pagan, the other one was some kind of Jewish zealot. These are good Christian women who have helped Paul and helped the congregation many times. But they had a disagreement. And so Paul's entreating them to have peace. You need to have peace. But I ask you, where does conflict arise? Conflict arises when you're not satisfied, when you're not content in your life, when you want something else. It comes when you're not spiritually minded. You're not thinking about the things of the things of God. You're thinking about the things of this world, the fleshly mindset. It comes when you're not thinking the best interest of others. You're not thinking about what I can do for them, how I can look out for the best interest of others. And it comes when you're not single-minded, when you're not having a devoted focus, when you're both having the unity that you should be, because you're going to the same place and you want the same thing, and that's God and his kingdom. That's where conflict arises, is when you're not having those mindsets. And so, inversely, where does peace come from? From being single-minded, from being selfless, having a selfless mindset, from having a spiritual mindset, and from having a satisfied mindset. That's where peace comes. Okay, continue. We'll get back to verse 4. But verse 5. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. So your reasonableness. I had to look at this word, because what does that mean? Like, everybody knows you're really good at logic, so you can reason things out. What does that mean? Most translations have this translated as gentleness or graciousness. And so it says, let your gentleness be known to everyone. So when there are the times in your life that you're the most frustrated, when you are the most annoying at someone, when you may be the most harsh at someone, is it those times in which you're not thinking about the best interest of others, when you're not thinking spiritual, when you're not thinking of a single focus in your life, when you're not satisfied? The times that I get most rough with someone, maybe at Walmart, and someone's just being stupid, or in the road and they try to cut me off, or when I'm, someone just says something that is offhanded and not very nice. You know what, the times that I want to not be gentle and I want to be harsh with them are the times I'm not thinking of that person as a soul. So the times where I'm not thinking, that's a soul that is lost and that needs saving, and I could be that person. But if I respond harshly, if I respond in bitter tone, then I'll never have a chance. But that mindset only comes from those four mindsets that we talked about. I only look at that person as a soul, as a person need to be saved, if I have a single mind, if I'm thinking selflessly, not my own stuff, if I'm thinking spiritually, and if I'm content and satisfied with my life, that's where that comes from, that gentleness and that graciousness. So 2 is having a gentle or gracious mindset. And then in verse 6 has 3 different ones. The first one is, do not be anxious about anything. Do not be anxious about anything. And what I say that is faith, having faith. Part of the fruit of righteousness is having faith. Because that is really the opposite of being anxious. If you're not being anxious, you're having faith. We talked about the Sermon on the Mount probably a few weeks ago now. But in the Sermon on the Mount, he talks about being anxious. But what we don't really put together is what comes right before he talks about being anxious and how you're not supposed to do that. He talks about what you put your reliance on. He talks about how you can't be a servant of God and a servant of man. How you either hate the one and love the other, or despise one, or hold to the other. You can't serve both God and mammon. And that's really because what you put your faith in is what you put your fear in, and is also what you put your hope in. So if your faith is in money, is in the physical things of life, of course you're going to be anxious, because money and the things of this earth and physical things, they're unreliable. They can't help you in times of need. They're going to let you down. Your stock prices are going to rise. It's going to fall. You can't hold on to it. On the other hand, if you put your faith in God, God is good. And God will be gracious to you. And he's going to be there for you. And he's reliable. You can go look at Romans 8, and it talks about that, I believe, or Romans 10. He talks about how reliable he is and how good he is and how he wants what's best for you. He wanted so much that he sent his son to die on a cross for our sins. Do you really think a God that is that good and loves you that much is not going to take care of you? If he was going to send his only son to die on a cross for my sin so that I can be with him in heaven, do you really think he's not going to take care of me when I'm in need, or listen to me in time of want? And really that comes through faith. And that comes through a mindset of spiritual mindset, of looking towards him, of having a single mindset and thinking of what I need to put my faith in. And with that, I will gain a satisfied mindset. I will be content on what God's given me, because I know he's looking for me. And I won't be anxious about anything. The next one in verse 6, he says, so do not be anxious, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. So don't just have faith. Don't not be anxious, but also have dependence on God. Because there's a little bit of difference between faith and dependence. Faith is, I believe that you can do this. Faith is kind of a trust. I believe that you can do this. I believe that you can take care of me. Dependence takes it a step farther. Dependence says, I need you. Not only do I believe that you can do it, I can't do it without you. And that brings humility. That's saying that I can't do it without you, that I can't do that, I can't handle the things of life without you. And you know how you get dependence? By being single-minded, by not thinking about yourself and building up yourself and how great and grand you were, by having a spiritual mindset and being satisfied with whatever you have in life. You have dependence. And it's not just believing that God can do it, but saying, I need God to do it because I can't handle it myself. And then finally, the third part of this is with supplication with thanksgiving. With thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. So you need to have a spirit of thankfulness as well. Part of the fruit of righteousness is having a spirit of thankfulness. So that when you trust God and you say, I can't do it without you, and then he responds and he gives you whatever you need, you're thankful. Which again goes back into being single-minded, being selfless, being spiritually minded, being satisfied with whatever he gives you, having a spirit of thankfulness, that it's a gift. It's a gift in this world. There's a study done, there's been multiple studies done about how the happiest people in the world are those who are thankful. That if you want to increase your happiness in the world, that guaranteed way to do it is by starting a thankful journal. And every day, just do one new thing that you're thankful for, and your happiness will increase. Now, I think they're talking about joy there. I think they're talking about something that is outside the realm of the events that happen to us in life. I think he's talking about the inward mindset that we have, that no matter what happens to us, we can find a reason to be thankful for the blessings that God has given us. And so we need to have a spirit of thankfulness. That's part of the fruit of righteousness. And then the last two, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you've learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. And so he talks about being pure. Purity in thought and purity in action. This is the same thing he talked about in chapter 1. And this also comes with having the 4S mindset. Being single-minded, thinking about him, being selfless, being spiritually mindset, not thinking about the fleshly things of these earth, not thinking about the fleshly and disgusting things, but whatever's holy, whatever's pure, whatever is good, whatever is lovely, think on these things. And then follow through and follow the example of Christ and Timothy and Paul and Epaphroditus and all these great men that we learned, and have that purity in your life. Then finally, this last one that we've been talked about for the past, 4 weeks now, almost a month, is rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I would say rejoice. This is the one we emphasize, and it's the one that Paul emphasized in the book of Philippians. 17 times in 4 chapters does he say rejoice or joy or some form of that word. And he gets to the end after he is rejoiced through all of this, and he has so much joy even though he's in prison, and he says, I want you to have that joy. I want you to have that joy in the Lord. And he says, I want you to have that joy always. Always. Not some of the time, not when things are going my way, not when I am not without need, when I'm not hungry, when everything is abundantly growing and I am doing well for myself. He says, always. Even when I'm hungry, even when I'm in need, even when I'm tired and horrible things in this life happen, I will rejoice. Because I have a single-mindedness. That I know where I'm going, and I know what my mission is on this earth. That I have a selfless mindset. That I'm not looking for my interests, I'm looking for you. Having a spiritual mindset. I'm not going to be carried about these fleshly things, the things of this earth. I'm going to be worrying about and caring for the next life. And then I'm going to have a satisfied mindset. That whatever good or bad comes upon me, I will be content in all things. And if I have those 4 mindsets, I will rejoice. And this is what he's telling the Philippians to have. The fruit of righteousness, which is part peace, part gentleness, part faith, part dependence, part thankfulness, part purity, and part joy. This is how you have the fruit of righteousness. And this is how Paul had joy. This is how Paul had joy, even though when he was on his way to Rome after being falsely accused and sitting in prison for multiple years, even though he did nothing wrong. And then on the ship to Rome, the ship was sinking, and there's chaos around, and everything was going wrong, but he just seemed fine. He content, and he had joy. Because he had a single-mindedness. He knew whether he met the Lord then or he was going to help other people later on, he was fine. He was selfless mindset that no matter what happened on this ship, that he was going to try to take care of the captain and everyone else. That he had a spiritual mindset, that he wasn't concerned about the physical things on this earth, that he was hungry or that he was in a ship that was drowning. He was cared about the spiritual well-being of those around him. That he has satisfied mindset, that he was content in whatever God threw at him. And so he had joy when he was in the midst of a shipwreck, in the middle of the Mediterranean Ocean, being imprisoned for no good reason whatsoever. He had joy. He also had joy when he was in the Philippian prison, when he had been beaten and he had been put in prison, again, not because he deserved it. And he sang and he prayed and he lifted up his with his Silas, his buddy, and he was able to think spiritual, think single-minded, think selfless, to be satisfied with whatever came to him. He had joy during that time where he was able to sing praises to God, even though the scars on his back hadn't fully even scarred over yet. And then he has joy now, sitting in prison. If you look at verse 22, I forgot to put it on the slide, but if you look at verse 22 of chapter 4, at the very end of the book, second last verse, it says, verse 21, greet every saint in Christ Jesus. The brothers with me greet you. Verse 22, all the saints greet you, especially those of Caesar's household. How do you think those people were taught? How do you think people of Caesar's household were taught of spiritual things and became Christians? It was because Paul. It's because where others would see an unfortunate circumstance that everything bad had happened in his life and it was terrible, it was horrible, and he just should be depressed and he should be angry at God and can't believe that he's in this situation. Paul saw it as an opportunity because he had joy that no situation could take care of. Because he had a single mindset, he wasn't thinking of himself, he was thinking about others in a selfless mindset. He had a spiritual mindset, and then whatever happened to him, he was satisfied because he had joy. And because of that mindset, he was able to convert some of Caesar's own household. And that encouraged the Philippians and that encouraged everyone else around him to have joy. So whatever situation that you're in right now, whether you're going through a good time, whether you're going through a bad time, have the joy. Have the joy like Paul. Have the joy according to the Apostle Paul. Have the mindsets that we've talked about over and over again. I've repeated numerous times that hopefully you remember. Have that mindset. And then once you have joy, go down the fruit of righteousness. Just keep going and see what's lacking. If you're not having joy in your life, what is lacking in your life? Are you just not single-minded enough? Are you just not selfless enough? Are you just not spiritual enough? Or are you just not satisfied enough? What is lacking in your life? If you're not feeling the joy that God only brings, one of those mindsets are off in your mind. And you need to bring it back. And if you do that, you will have joy, according to the Apostle Paul. I love you all. I hope you're doing great. If you need anything, just let me know. And I will be there anytime. If you need any spiritual help, also, I will be here anytime. I hope you have a good day, and I hope this has been encouragement to you.